Good afternoon. Welcome to the June 28th meeting of the Newbury Human Resources Board. I'd like to call the meeting to order and just take a moment and introduce who's here. Mark Kleckman, Chair.
Diane Doyle.
John Farrar.
Anthony Antico.
Thank you all. Chief Lucy was hoping to join us. He had another meeting this afternoon that he indicated might bump up against this one. He said he would do his best to join us, but I explained to him that we had a quorum regardless, and so rather than wait, let's just move forward in the agenda in the hope that John may be able to join us. But if not, we are legal and ready to go here. So we've had our call to order. Let's just take a moment to approve the prior minutes. And what we're looking at here today is the minutes of the subcommittee meeting, which was held on Monday, June 21st. If everyone could just take a moment and read through those minutes, please. This is specific to the classification subcommittee meeting we had in reference to the Inspectional Services Administrative Assistant position, which was presented to us with a new job description from Martha Taylor, Director of Planning.
This should have been 10:02.
Okay.
It's amended.
Bookkeeping. Has everyone had a chance to read through the minutes?
Yes.
Is there a motion to accept?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none? A vote to accept the minutes. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Next order of business is...
Well, we're going to postpone the minutes of the May meeting because
Yeah.
they're not.
Yeah, sorry, the minutes of, the minutes of our May full board meeting are not yet ready for inspection, and so we will plan on reviewing and approving those minutes in the July meeting. Thank you, Diane. Employee issues, seeing that John Lucy's not with us at the moment, Diane, I would turn to you. Anything that this board needs to be aware of in terms of employee issues?
None that I can think of.
Okay. Personal actions and job vacancies. Now that Diane has got me on tap here to sign 6,000 or 7,000 pages of PAF sometime in the not too distant future. I'm going to the gym every day, getting my forearm ready for that. Otherwise,
To work on your penmanship.
Diane, anything to speak to in terms of job vacancies? Anything that's come since our last meeting or
Yep.
filled since then?
So we have two positions that are open. One is the recently classified position of the Inspectional Services Administrative Assistant position. We had someone previously in that role, and she was within her 6-month probationary period, and it wasn't working out. So she has left, and that position is now open. I know Tracy's actively reviewing resumes and looking to fill that
Great.
as quickly as possible. We also recently received a resignation from our DPW Administrative Assistant, who is going to be leaving for personal reasons. She's going to be doing something completely different. So she'll be leaving in the middle of July, and again, Tracy's actively reviewing resumes and getting that position filled as well.
Is this the individual who took that role when Gretchen moved? Was it Gretchen that moved
No.
over from that role, or
No.
am I confusing?
So Jen Crisco took the position. She filled Julie's position when Julie took Ellen's position as the executive administrator.
So Gretchen's not involved in that equation?
No.
Okay.
No. So both of those are being resumes have been received, and we're actively reviewing those, and hopefully by the next meeting we should have somebody selected and hopefully even on board. So.
Great. Thank you. Nothing else coming down the pike as far as you know?
Nothing that I'm aware of.
Personnel actions,
Just
other than that?
the PAFs.
Just those, okay,
Yep.
great. Safety issues, again, we'll defer to John Lucy, and that nothing I'm aware of. Diane, anything with the new protocols in place over the last 45 days or so in Town Hall? Have you heard anything about issues or concerns relative to either employee and or public safety coming in and out of the building?
I have not heard of any issues whatsoever. We've had a nice soft opening. We haven't been inundated. It's been a slow tax season, so we're not having a lot of people coming in, but I haven't heard of any issues, employees or taxpayers. The only issue that really has been surfacing for people in this last couple of weeks was the transition from remote meetings to in-person
Right.
meetings.
Right.
But other than that, none that I'm aware of. It's
Okay.
been pretty smooth and really haven't had any issues.
Great, thank you. I'm not aware of any discrimination and or ethics issues that have popped up. We have no other new business to discuss this afternoon. We've got a couple of trailing items, one in particular, which is what we've been talking about for a little bit, but that's on hold still, and that is the potential that we'll be asked to create some sort of a template for performance analysis, performance appraisals, performance reviews, call it what you will. Yet to be determined still whether the select board and in concert with town administration is anxious to move forward on that. We assume that may be the case, but we're not quite there yet.
There is a virtual library on the internet, small towns throughout New England.
Yep.
I mean, it would take you a week to read them all.
Yeah.
And it speaks to acceptability, it speaks to use, it speaks to all elements of who and when. And it comes down to two main items. Useful, but has to be tempered with the fact that everybody that receives one of those fitness reports has the right to step back and speak to it,
Right.
to the person handing it out, and that's where I think the board's going to recoil.
That was part of the rationale a couple of years ago when I first brought it forward. It's fair to say that the board was certainly not unanimous in its thinking then, and it may not be unanimous in its thinking now, the board being the select board, about the appropriateness. I think Newbury sits right in the middle of where most of the similar communities, at least in this area, are, as I think I mentioned a few months ago. When this came up in 2018 or 19, I had done some homework, starting locally as we always do, because there's some meaning to it. So we looked at Salisbury and Georgetown and West Newbury and Rowley and Ipswich and Essex and so forth, Merrimack, and there was anything but unanimity. Some towns were gung-ho on the use of or the practice of performance reviews. Others looked at it and had zero interest. Some tried it and then stepped back. Some tried it and stayed with it. And even within that group of towns, there are as many different kinds of varied forms as there are towns. Some very simplistically use a one-page, 4-question, how's it going, what can we do to improve it, what do we need to keep doing, so forth and so on. To 6-page, filled with metrics, multiple choice questions and answers in each category. So it's all over the lot. It's as much an art as it is a science, certainly.
Well, you get a sense too of the person leaving, Martha Taylor's assistant's position, and for it not to work out, it has to have demonstrable bookkeeping. I mean, the items that lead you to the decision for dismissal.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big criterion for it, is that like any fitness report in a regulated industry like the military, how do you send somebody to mast or dismiss them or break them in rank or give them a sideways job instead of an advancement unless you've got performance reports
Right.
to prove it.
Right. And this, what we hope is that, if we have to set up anything, it will be a win-win-win. It will be a win for the employee.
Yep.
Who needs to have documentation, good, bad, or otherwise,
Yes.
as to how he or she is performing on the job. It's a win for the managerial population in that it allows documentation, it allows for a look back as well as a look forward, be able to see how an individual is improving performance and how that individual's performance might affect a group, the entire town administration. And it's certainly a win for the town, I believe, in that to me, it's safety protocol. it protects, I believe it protects the town against the possibility that 6 years from now, there might be an employee dismissal which is controversial. And to whatever extent we have documentation, we have history, we have clear language which indicates patterns or concerns or, you know, a history of questionable work performance perhaps or behavioral performance. I've always felt that the town needed that to protect itself against the possibility of lawsuit. Knock wood, Newbury's not had much of any of that. There's been some, obviously, and it's been well publicized, but that goes back a few years. I would like to make sure that never happens again. So again.
The question is on hold for,
Well, it's been on hold for a couple months now because everyone wanted to get through budget season, wanted to get through beginning of the fiscal year, wanted to get through the election cycle. And Tracy and I haven't had a chance to catch up over the last couple, 3 weeks. My intention is to sit with her to make sure that she's still a proponent of this. She has been in the past, but I don't want to speak for her now.
Okay.
Assuming she continues to be a proponent for some type of performance evaluation, performance review, then we'll make a plan as to how to present that to the select board in one of their upcoming meetings, get their reactions. The hope is that they'll go back and say, okay, cook up some ingredients and let's see what you come up with, which is what we talked about a little bit last month. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but
right.
so that's a trailing item, but nothing we need to discuss tonight. Tony.
On looking at the personnel manual that we had many months of joy putting together and
Right.
everything else, is there anything, I don't have my copy here, but I recall there are sections in there relative to personnel evaluations, what you know, the people look at, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, how deeply, I think I'm answering my own question, how deeply does it go, the personnel manual? I thought we had spent a substantial amount of time with that particular item.
So my recollection of that is there was a reference to performance evaluations, and because we weren't conducting them and there was a reference to actually completing them, we had made a decision, as I recall, to remove that section referencing the performance evaluations, because in the policy you can't reference something that's not being conducted. However, in the personnel policy manual, there is a very large section that's devoted to the system by which people are given warnings and verbal warnings, written warnings.
Right.
There is a large section that goes through sort of the, I hate to use the word punitive steps, but the steps to call to the employee's attention if there's an issue. But we did remove the language that
I think we did, yeah.
referenced the performance evaluations, because we said, well, we're referencing something that we don't even do. So that was my recollection, but there is a large section in there about the steps that a manager or the town can go through to call to, basically start the process of documenting those negative issues and giving the ability for the employee to correct them, if you will. But there's no, it's not designated as a performance
There was
evaluation.
nothing to document the positive issues then.
Correct.
And that's the point.
Correct, that's what we're, yes,
Right, that's the
Yeah.
point we started to address last month, I think, when the subject came up.
yes.
That even though they sound very similar, they're really two very distinct entities. You know, one is a process by which, you know, an employee has an opportunity to address issues that have been brought to his or her attention. There's a grievance process, which is well documented. And there are the steps that the manager must take, you know, either prior to or subsequent to that grievance process to make sure that the manager has done his or her part properly. Very different than a proactive, in kind of a prophylactic way, you know, a performance evaluation, which hopefully allows that you'll never get to that point in time where you need to file a grievance or you need to start, you know, a discharge process. That's the hope, is to avoid that.
Yeah, I think in the last meeting I mentioned that form that's called, it's an iCare form, incident concern,
Right.
action required, something. And it's basically, several people have used it to bring to the attention of the employee that there's an issue, and this is what the steps are that we'd like to see you take to get to the point where we've corrected that action.
Question on the unions that serve the town, police, fire, I guess, the educators as well. Do they have in their bag of tricks
My recollection,
evaluations, specific evaluations for their members?
I believe we asked Chief Lucy that a couple of months ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think his response was that up until fairly recently, they did have something in place, but I think, and I can't recall what the reasoning was, I think that had either been in a review process and had been put aside, hadn't yet gotten back to it. At least does anyone else recall that being part of the conversation? I'll check with John.
I don't think
But
it
it's
was
a good question, Tony.
I don't-
I think they would have their own certainly, as part of the collective bargaining agreement, I would think.
Right, because that was an issue about bringing this forward. What do we do with the collective bargaining agreements?
Right, no, I know.
Are the desk officers and reserves in the union?
The reserve officers are.
Okay.
The communication dispatch are not.
Or not? Okay.
So the teachers, police, fire?
Well, teachers aren't part of the town of Newbury, it's a district, so that's a completely separate entity.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it would be the DPW, the police, and I'm hearing that it will soon be the fire department as well.
Yeah. So I think what we'll do, as we talked about before, is we'll start with Tracy at the town administrator level, just to ensure that her feelings haven't changed, that she's been a proponent in the past, assuming she still is, then, we'll bring it in its infancy form to the select board, letting them know what our hopes are, and see how they respond, and see if we can get their blessing, because it's required. And if for some reason they choose to pass on it, then we'll put it back in the closet.
But it may also be that methodology that exists among the union entities would look good in itself, and say, why don't we just expand it,
Could be.
We could check with John.
you know?
Yep. You don't have to recreate the wheel if it's not necessary. I'm pretty sure John told us that they had something at one point, but either it was in a suspense file somewhere, or they had chosen to put it on ice for some reason while they got to other priorities. But again, I'm not sure. We'll discuss that with him next month as well, so.
Okay.
And I don't think there are any other trailing issues that we need to address that we've been poking around.
The only thing that I still have on the back burner is the organizational chart that we had talked about many months ago. And then with the new addition of our IT communications manager, he just came on board and just got running with a bunch of other things. But that's something that I have on the list to work on with
Good.
him. He has some software, I guess, capabilities within our town website provider that may be able to assist in that, and it hasn't been brought up back in this meeting, but the onus is on me to sit with him as well as John Lucy to see if we can come up with something. So it is a project that's sort of off the agenda, but still on
Yeah, thank you for reminding me.
my list of to-dos.
Okay, yep, that's great. Any other additional new business to consider? Hearing none, let's move to the final agenda item, which is scheduling the next meeting, July 26th. Is that a date that, as of now, works for folks? I know there have been some years where we've made the decision to take the July meeting off since it's just after the beginning of the fiscal year. I would prefer not to do that this time around, only because this trailing issue of the performance reviews is something we've been kicking around for a while, and I would like not to have to wait another 60 days to move it forward.
I had
Any objection to that, or?
not at all.
I do know that Tracy's on vacation the next 2 weeks, so I don't know if you'll be able to get in, so that will be, mid-July.
Oh, that's fine, that'll
Yeah.
give us 2 weeks, that's
Yep.
fine. We've got a date of Monday, July 26th, is that right?
Yes.
Yep, Monday, July 26th.
Oops, that needs to say 4 p.m.
I'm just looking at, that might be a challenge for me. I've got an appointment at Leahy Clinic down in Burlington. Might be able to get that. Let's leave the meeting in place. I'll do my best to get here by 4. It might be close, but if I'm running a little bit late, I'll let you folks know, and hopefully we'll have a quorum anyway, so I don't wanna have to reschedule it, so, is that, how does July 26th at 4 PM work for folks?
So far, so good.
Fine with me.
All right, let's plug that in, and Diane, if you would mind letting Chief Lucy
Yep.
know that,
John, did you have something you want?
Yeah, I did.
oh, sorry.
Jeff and I had a long meeting on a couple of personal items and friendship items. And I wanted to broach this subject, but his bride was there and we were talking about other things. And his son showed up in the kitchen. And charming introduction. I haven't seen him since he was age 8. That's a subject I would like to broach to him and ask him what he thinks either the berm wall or the acceptance level is at the board for performance aspect. Jeff Walker.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's an utterly candid human being. He's going to tell me exactly where the pitfalls are and where the inertia is.
Okay.
Make sure we sort of work with.
What's that?
Well, I'll start with Tracy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
start with
I just
Tracy.
stopped in and mentioned it to her,
Yeah.
and mentioned also the article that was in the newspaper this morning,
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
number 25, and she's going to sit with me and talk to me about that.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, I didn't see
Just
it.
make sure you don't bump up against
Read it.
any open meetings laws.
Yeah.
No, I won't.
You don't want to be speaking to three members of the select board.
Well, I've already written to all of the selectmen, my idea, where 25 and COA ought to go.
Good.
Right? Everybody's on notice that, and I'm looking for permission from Tracy to put it in as I see it column, without hurting anybody's feelings.
Okay, good. So we've got our next meeting scheduled for July 26th at 4 PM. And if you could let Chief Lucy know that. Is there anything else? In that mind, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.